Hello, I'm Meredith Blackwell. This is Don Pfister, and this is Emily Cantonwine, and she is our newest executive vice president for the Mycological Society of America. And this is the 10th of July,
Yep.
2022. And we want to interview Emily about some of the things that she does, which she'll be learning about in some cases for the society, because it's a very huge job that she does. So Don, do you have any comments?
No, we're happy to be doing these, and the idea is that we're just hearing about people and their involvement with mycology and with fungi and with the society. So Emily, why don't you begin by a little introduction of yourself?
Sure. Hello, I'm Emily Cantonwine, and I'm a professor of biology at Valdosta State University, which is just about an hour and a half north of here. So it's a pretty easy drive for me. I'm actually north, just over the Florida border into Georgia. That's where I'm at. I've been there since 2007, and it's a primarily undergraduate institution. So I do a lot of teaching. I teach mycology, a biodiversity of macrofungi class, which is really fun, plant pathology, and introduction to biology for majors.
A lot of preparations.
Yes, a lot of coursework, a lot of teaching. And then I also have a research program. I study fungi that attack peanut plants, and there's two cercosporoid-like species that I work with.
So. I worked one summer on soybeans because I got paid 9 months and I hadn't budgeted my money very well. And I worked for the plant pathologist at LSU. I was lucky to have the job.
Yeah.
But we found lots of your fungi that summer. Yeah. So where'd you go to? Why don't you tell us first where you were born and something a little bit about your family? Were they interested in biology?
So I'm from Ohio, southern Ohio near Cincinnati.
I was in. Well, he went to school.
Well, I went to Miami University, and
So did I.
The cradle of botany.
Yes.
And football
was it
coaches.
Still botany then?
It was botany then.
Yeah.
Well, I think it still is.
No,
botany.
it's not.
No.
it's gone.
I
It's
served
gone.
on a committee and we recommended that it stay botany, and it did for a while.
Oh.
It must be very
Yeah.
recent that it's changed.
Yeah, no, well, mine was the olden days at Miami,
Yeah.
but I liked it. It really gave me the kind of background that I needed to go on and teach, and you're doing that. But I often thought when I was teaching various things, anatomy, plant anatomy, for example, I knew about plant anatomy because of my undergraduate work there in the botany.
It all comes
It was an
handy.
excellent department. It really
Yeah.
was.
And
Yeah.
I was there for 2 years, and my job there was I was the social chairman of newcomers. The
Really?
Faculty Wives Club.
Oh, I did not know that.
I was married at the time, and my husband was a plant taxonomist. Will Blackwell?
Well, yes. I mean, I
Was he
definitely.
there at
I
the time?
don't know if he was there.
Okay.
Martha Powell was
Yeah.
there when I
And-
was
and
there.
They're married, and so small world.
Oh, I did not understand that connection. Okay, well then he was there. Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Oh, how
and
interesting.
Right now, my daughter is on the way to visit them.
Oh, how nice. Oh my goodness.
Anyway, all kinds of things we didn't know about each other.
Absolutely, how nice.
Well, you should talk a little bit about Miami.
Oh, Miami's a beautiful campus. The university is absolutely amazing. So botany department, at the time I was there, I came in, I guess it was 1990, and graduated in 94. I grew up nearby in Middletown, Ohio.
Oh yeah, Middletown has a campus, doesn't it, of Miami?
It does.
Mhm.
And in fact, my parents worked there.
Uh-huh.
So actually, my father worked at Hamilton's campus.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, those were there when I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then my mother worked at the Middletown campus.
Uh-huh.
What
Yeah.
were their areas?
My father was computer science, and my mother was sort of administration, kind of
Okay.
career counseling.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you grew up in a family that was education oriented.
Yes, education oriented, but not biology oriented. But besides, like Girl Scouts, my mother was a Girl Scout leader, so she would take us camping, and we'd go outside. But I wouldn't say that they knew a lot about biology.
Mhm.
And I just remember having a lot of questions about biology that perhaps didn't get answered, you know, and that curiosity just, I guess that's why I chose botany, you know, because I never got my plant questions answered. Like my teachers couldn't answer them, my parents couldn't answer them.
They
and
probably could answer them
So
more
you'll
than
do your own.
so I figured, well, you know, maybe someday I'll get them answered. And I don't even know what questions they were at the time, other than just what on earth is a plant? I just don't get it.
Well, now we can ask the same thing about a fungus. But one other
Oh,
thing, you
yeah.
mentioned the Girl Scout connection. Years ago, one of the members of the society was trying to do a Boy Scout merit badge. And why don't you do a Girl Scout one in all your
In
spare time?
mycology, right? In
Yes.
yeah, merit badge in mycology.
Well, the executive council actually has asked, this is brand new, but we're planning on asking the education committee to explore that possibility.
Yeah, and the person who was interested in it was Dean Glavy, who's retired now, and
Okay.
he might have some hints.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it's
Well,
not done.
did he get the Boy Scout badge
No,
up and running?
it didn't get finished, I don't think. But
yeah.
it was a good idea.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
brilliant idea, and we hope to.
Yep, and now
Give them a
they've
charge.
got fungi that are separate. They're in their own kingdom,
Right.
so that would
Yeah.
be great.
Yeah. Good idea.
The time is ripe.
So do you remember the first fungus that you kind of picked up and identified and got
Oh, it's such a good question.
thinking about?
The very first. Well, no, I don't.
Okay.
I know that in Martha Powell's class, we went and we hiked a creek, and you know, I definitely remember, you know, seeing some neat things, and I remember loving that class. But I can't say that anything really stuck with me. So.
No, I'm asking the
don't
question
remember.
because I remember so well going out, being on that campus, going
Oh.
out and finding a fungus
Yeah.
and bringing it back to the department. And William E. Wilson was the Prof. Wilson was the mycologist, plant pathology teaching. And I took it in and showed it to him. It turned out it was Sarcosypha coccinea, which.
Oh, I love that one.
And,
Absolutely.
And
So I was young and naive, but it speaks to the department in a way. You know, I went in and he was there, and I said, "Look what I found,"
Wow.
and like a little kid, and thinking that maybe nobody else has seen this.
Right. A brand new species. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and he said, "Oh, that," and he opened his field guide and showed it to me. But
that's so
you know,
neat.
it was partly that campus and being in that
It's
environment.
Such an amazing campus.
yeah.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I, wasn't involved much with the department, but I remember Prof. Wilson. In fact, there were 4 Wilsons in the department when we were there.
Sooner or later, yeah.
There were 2
Yeah.
when I was there.
Yeah. No, I think 4 were. Well, Prof. Wilson had just retired, I think, but there were 3 on the faculty.
T.J. Wilson was there when I
And
was
Ken?
there.
Was it
and
Ken?
then Ken
Ken
Wilson.
Wilson.
Those were the 2 that.
They were after my time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and there was a third one. I'll have to think
Yeah,
about it.
but-
I don't remember, but
Yeah.
it was just amazing.
Yeah. Well,
It was an wonderful department for master teachers and so.
So where did you go after that?
So after Miami University, I got a job at the Savannah River Ecology Lab, which is in South Carolina. It's a
Did you know-
University of Georgia.
Did you know Whit Gibbons?
Whit Gibbons, yes.
I was in grad school with him at Alabama.
Were you really? Oh my
Yeah, I've
goodness.
seen him not long ago. He and Carol.
Yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, I hadn't seen him since we left.
Oh,
Alabama.
oh my goodness, how neat.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because he lives in Aiken, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
all
spent a
kinds of
lot of time with
connections.
Witt's lab, and yeah, he was just amazing.
He was a herpetologist.
Such a great scientist. Yeah.
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 It was fun.
So I worked there as a technician with a plant ecologist, a community plant ecologist, And so still thinking plants were my future.
Who was that?
Her name was Beverly Collins, and she worked closely with Becky Sherritts.
Okay.
So,
Right.
and Beverly is now at Western Carolina University, and Becky Sherritts recently passed away. So, but just really wonderful female mentors, you know, early career female mentors.
But then you went on.
I did. I was very interested in chemical ecology. Plant chemical ecology is what I thought I wanted to do. And so I found a great chemical ecologist down at Florida International University. His name is Kelsey Downham. And so I did my master's degree with him. And I studied a little plant called Biden's alba, which is out here. It's just
grows
a
in the
weed.
grass. doesn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. It's everywhere. But it produces a chemical, I'm sure a lot of things, but a cool phytotoxin, phenoheptatriene. And so because it was phototoxic, I was interested in how different wavelengths of light might impact its synthesis. And it was a nice little, you know, master's project. And
Does anything eat it? Is
Um,
it dangerous to you?
I
Anything?
don't think it's, well, I'm sure it probably is. I don't see a lot of herbivory
Yeah.
on it, so probably not too much. Yeah. Yeah,
And
good
then?
question.
Yeah.
Oh, so, excuse me. I'm sorry if I'm rubbing this and making noise. I'm used to touching my face. So let's see, after I got my master's degree, I moved up to Athens, Georgia. I had met a man at SREL, and he had moved to Athens to finish his degree, and we sort of fell in love. And so I moved up there to spend some time with him, and I worked for a year at a bioag engineering department where I just managed a lab. And at that time, I thought I was going to be a high school teacher because I had fallen in love with teaching at FIU as a master's student. I'm like, I'm just going to quit science and be a high school teacher. And so for a year I worked, and then I decided I was just going to quit school, get certified to teach. And so I stayed in Athens, I got certified to teach, or I took the coursework. And then I did my student teaching. And if anybody out there is thinking that they might want to be a high school teacher, they should maybe do substitute teaching before they actually put all this time into getting certified. Because as I did my student teaching, it became very clear that this was
Not it.
no, this was not it for me. So, and in fact, I decided that getting a PhD was going to be much easier. And so I opened up the UGA. This was when there were catalogs, physical catalogs. I just opened up the catalog, looking at what UGA had to offer. And that's when I discovered plant pathology. And I was always interested in applied research. That was the one thing that didn't work for me in ecology, was it wasn't applied enough for me. And when I saw plant pathology, and then I sort of looked at the faculty there, and I saw the concept of epidemiology, which I love math, and just the idea of modeling things. I'm like, oh, this is it. So I walked in to the UGA plant science building, walked up to Charles Mims' office. He was the graduate coordinator at the time.
A long time, I think.
And this was, I'm thinking it was like late July, early August, you know, because I just realized I was not. And I said, I think I'm interested in this. And he said, well, I've got money for you if you want to do it.
Just like that.
And so I think like the next week I was a PhD student. So it was amazing because I joined the department. I did not have a major professor, which is very unusual.
Right.
You know, usually you find somebody. And so, but it was really nice. I got to sort of get introduced to plant pathology and then just visit people, learn about their research as I was learning about plant pathology.
You didn't have rotations in Georgia?
No,
Yeah.
no. But I sort of created my own.
rotation.
I did my own. And I just, just, went around and met some people and traveled down to the Tifton campus, and they do a lot of applied research down there. And met a man, Albert Colbreth. I don't know if you all have met Albert Colbreth. He's a peanut fungal pathologist. And he had a very interesting project on sort of a mystery of why this late and early leaf spot disease epidemics were suppressed in no-till peanut. So you had less disease when you didn't till than you did when you did till, which is kind of opposite of what you would expect, because normally you think of tilling as like turning the initial inoculum under. But, and these were fungi that did, overwinter in the soil. So it was kind of just a nice big mystery. He said, I don't know why. And so I did a nice little epidemiological, we sort of built a project around that. And
You have to give us the answer.
Yes.
oh, it's very interesting. So in no-till, at least I can explain part of it. In no-till, there is the overwintering crop debris that is left in the soil or left in the field. And it actually acts as a barrier to the initial inoculum landing on the plant. We were able to demonstrate that by doing some cool, experimental work where you take the debris out or you add debris after tilling.
So it's blanketing and shielding or burying the inoculum itself in a way, keeping it under the.
I don't know if it buries it as much as it just blocks dispersal to.
And what are the pathogens?
Well, at the time, they were Cercospora arachidicola and Cercosporidium personatum. They're now Passiflora arachidicola and Nothopassilora personata.
So name changes.
Yes, name changes, same guy, and they're Mycosphaerella.
Yeah. The sexual state.
The sexual, yeah, which we have not seen since I have not seen the sexual state in the field. So
What about after the plant's died? Does it show up?
well, I'm still learning how to
Oh.
find them, but
Okay.
nobody I know has seen them. It has been reported though, yes, from like the 30s.
Yeah, I was asking because when I worked with the people with the soybeans, what they did was actually put they put down something to kill the plants, and then they were able to find the sexual state,
Okay,
mimicking the
right.
end of the season.
Well, that's one of my career goals is to see the
You're
sexual.
still at it.
I'm still at it. I have a lot to learn
Sorry.
of like how to actually find it and thinking about when to look. But I'm still at it. Someday I hope to see
That's
it.
interesting. I remember really well E.S. Luttrell. Did you know?
I did
you were
not.
Much later.
No.
Yeah, because I visited him several times, and some once right before he died. But he had this great paper he wrote about working on the diseases of soybean. Have you read that ever?
I don't think I have.
It had a neat name, The Great Soybean something or other. And I think it was published in Phytopath. But I remember he was saying he had it all finished, and Charles Mims said, "Oh, it's early," and he says, "I've got my own time clock, so
Right.
yeah." So he got it finished, but it was really interesting. It was peanuts. I'm sorry, it wasn't. It was. Peanuts.
Oh, it was peanut. Well, then
Yeah.
I'm sure I've read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was about peanuts. The
Okay.
Great Peanuts something or other. But it's a really neat little paper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sort of a review of all the work that's
I'll
been
look it up
done.
again
Yeah.
after this.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Oh,
And-
so after my PhD,
Mhm.
I actually stayed in Tifton and worked for the National Environmentally Sound Agricultural NESPAL, National Environmentally Sound Agriculture Lab. I don't know.
You know, we're so used to acronyms that we can't
But
reconstruct.
I've
Isn't
not
that funny?
I've not heard of.
Yeah. So it's a sort of it's a lab where basically it's for interdisciplinary types of research where they just sort of help to bring in different departments. And I sort of spearheaded efforts to develop an organic agriculture research field at the Tifton campus. So it was the first time that they had a certified organic.
Interesting.
And sort of spearheaded some projects on organic peanut production, as well as I did some like bioenergy work. That was with Craig Queen and then a USDA collaborator, Coralie Holbrook. And I was planning on just creating a career for myself there just because of personal reasons. My husband, he worked in North Florida, and Tifton is very close. So I didn't think that there would be teaching jobs. I figured I'd find a career in Tifton with either USDA or UGA. I'd make it work, right? And then, a year later or 2 years later, I can't remember, but Valdosta State University put an ad out for a mycologist. And
There you were right there.
I was right there.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I've got to get this job. So I was very fortunate. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So you're teaching all of these courses and different courses. We always think about, is there a teaching philosophy, or is there something that we aim for when we're doing all of this? And you've got a lot of different types of courses. I presume these are liberal arts type students. How do you approach them, and how do you sell these courses?
Well, that's a really great question. First off, I'll just say Miami University, there was a professor, James Hickey, who actually,
I know him. He worked for us as a curatorial assistant at Harvard.
Oh my goodness.
He does the isoetes and fern allies and so forth. Yeah, I know him from way back. Yeah. Isn't that funny?
He was, so I never had him as a professor because he taught at Hamilton, but he helped me get into a research lab because my father and anyway, long story short, he helped me get a job. And
This is when you were an undergrad?
this was when I was an undergrad, and he overheard me one day complaining about my genetics teacher and how it was basically the teacher's fault. He was too, scatterbrained, or I'm sure I didn't quite say it that way, but, unorganized is probably what I said. And I just couldn't figure it out. And anyway, Jim Hickey came over and said, well, I can help you with that. Why don't you just come over to my office hours, And so, he invited me, I had to go, right? So and he said, bring your book with you. And okay, so I walk over there with my book and, thinking that he's going to agree with me that this professor it's so funny what you think when you're a student. And anyway, he sits down, he says, well, what are you confused about? I'm sure I said DNA. He said, well, anyway, give me more specific. And he said, okay, well, let's find it in the book. And we opened up the book, we found this chapter. He said, okay, just read this right there. And he sat there quietly as I read. He said, did that help? I said, no. He said, well, read it again. So I read, and he said, did that help? And I'm like, yeah. And he said, okay, well, what else are you confused about? And so we go to another section, and I read, oh. And he said, anything else? I said, no, I think I have it. And so I closed the book, I walked out of there, and I changed. I went from a BC student to a straight A student.
And all it took was reading?
All it took was somebody to explain that it was my responsibility.
I get it.
It was my responsibility. It was not the professor's. Now, he did not tell me that directly. I figured it out under his direction, right? But to answer your question, that is what I try to do for my students, is I try to be gentle about it. I'm there for them, and I direct them. So I feel like I'm more of a facilitator of the learning process. And that's what really inspires me.
It's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And many times that we tell a student on the syllabus, here's your reading material, read it before you come to class. Read it after you come to class, and doesn't get done.
Mm-mm.
Anita, James, Hickey, or you. It's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's very helpful, I think, for people to think about how it is that we present and expect in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
So anything that you want to add, or things that we've left out, asking you want to talk about?
Mm. Well, I guess we were going to talk a little bit about the executive vice president
Yeah.
position. So I'll just say that, attending MSA has been really helpful for me as a mycologist and a teacher. I joined MSA in 2007 once I got my job at VSU. I was with APS before then, and also a peanut society. They were kind of my main groups, and I still attend those. But when I started coming to MSA meetings, that's when I really feel like my teaching and my research program just was elevated. And so, it's been really meaningful for me. MSA has been. And I have to give credit to Mark Kubetta for getting me involved with MSA. He invited me to take over his chairmanship of the education committee. And then I was chair of the education committee for a couple years. And then somebody nominated me for the executive vice president.
I bet Mark may have been involved.
Yeah, right. Right, Mark may have been involved. So, I really was nervous about it, but I figured, well, I'm sure I can do it. I'll have a lot to learn. And so I just said, as long as...
It's great. It's great, really.
Yeah.
You learn so much about all the people.
Yeah, well, in the olden days, the secretary did a lot of the work that you're doing, I think.
Well, they just changed the name from the... I was, a woman called a secretary, and so here I was doing this, but you really...
But I was secretary too.
Yeah, and you were a male doing it, but a lot of males didn't do it who went on in the society, but it's much better.
Do you remember when they changed that, when they changed the name?
Not so long ago, is it?
Yeah. But see, even before that, I started out as secretary-treasurer.
Mm.
And my major professor, C.J. Alexopoulos, was the secretary-treasurer. And at the same time, he decided there needed to be a newsletter. And so he did that. It was a mimeograph thing, as I remember it.
Okay.
And something that had to be mailed out.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was secretary, email was just starting, and not everyone had an email address. And you were...
Well, my professor, Dick Korff, was also secretary-treasurer, and he did the newsletter. And then I did the newsletter for a period when it was separate, after it was separate. So I think that was before I was secretary. I did the newsletter, and that was partly... We had a newsletter editor, Martha Sherwood, who then got a job in the UK, and I had promised council that if she left, I would do it. So I did the newsletter for a couple years after she left.
Mm-hmm. But I think it's a great society, and I had someone who introduced me to the society the way you were introduced by Mark, and it was far. He and Maggie had a meeting at Amherst that year. It was where I met Dawn. It was my first meeting.
Oh, nice.
And during the meeting, he pulled me aside and asked me if I wanted to be on the awards committee. And so I accepted, and then eventually you become the chair. Mm-hmm. And I was at a four-year school in Michigan at the time, and we had one photocopy machine on the campus, and it was in a different building.
Oh.
And so everything had to be sent out for evaluation, and I would spend hours in the main building. And they always laughed because we had an IBM computer and I
Typewriter.
at a Xerox. No, it was
Oh, was
not a computer. I mean, it was an IBM photocopy machine,
Oh,
and then we had the Xerox computer.
Oh,
at the
really?
place. Yeah. I
Oh,
think
that's
it's a Xerox
odd.
computer. Isn't there such a thing? Not that I used it. But it was,
I don't
But,
know.
but it
I did the newsletter with an IBM typewriter with the
Okay.
removable
Oh my
ball.
Gosh, wow.
yeah.
That's
yeah,
a lot of work.
yeah. Well,
the bad old days.
Yeah.
They were fun though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was interesting. I
Mhm.
learned a lot about how you put together things.
Right.
yeah.
And I met a lot of people all the hours I spent photocopying in the main building
Right.
at Hope College. So it was fun. Yeah, so
Mhm.
the society's been really good to me.
Mhm.
You know, it's a way to build your CV.
Mhm.
And I think it's responsible for my getting tenure at 2 different places.
Yeah, that's nice.
Well, it's great to talk to you, and I'm glad to discover a Miami graduate.
I know.
And
3
you-
Miami connections here. That's amazing.
And then you did catch earlier, I had a Miami connection through football. Not that I'm the big football fan, but my family is. And so I've always heard about the cradle of coaches.
Right.
And Dietzel was one of the LSU coaches. I'm pretty sure he was from Miami.
Well, they often went from Miami to Ohio State, as I recall.
Coaches.
Right, yeah.
Some of them made it south.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
okay, well,
interesting.
thanks so
Well, thank you. I
much.
enjoyed that.